Chapter 3. Relatedness. So, the actor walks a fine line between the events and their activities. They are affected and relate themselves to the event. But, just what are we talking about when we say this? What do we mean when we say, we are related to an event? How we are affected by events depends on 4 critical things. They are: who the person is to you, the relationship; how this person behaves, their actions; the motive for their actions, the reason; how this changes your life, the consequence. Let's start with the foundation of what the event means to us. The relationship. When I talk about relationships, I am talking about all those people that you know in your everyday life. The people that you interact with, friends, lovers, and what these people mean to you. As a person in the story, you will also have all sorts of relationships with the other people. The difference for acting purposes is that the amount of relationships will be severely limited to only those that the writer needs to tell the story. So, while relationships in the everyday world vary wildly, based on an ever-changing range of conditions, in the acting realm they quickly fall into several broad categories. These categories are dependent on the storytelling art, and they are created by that art form's needs. There are 7 of them. They are: 1. Someone to run from, the monster. The single most important feature of monsters is that they overwhelm us with fear. We have all seen the monster rising up to terrify us. They present us with imminent death and danger, well beyond our ability to cope with. The most common responses to this is to escape, to hide, to avoid, or to placate and appease. If we exert our will and oppose them, then the relationship becomes our next relationship. 2. Someone to push away, the enemy. Exerting our will, our courage, places us into the situation of contention or opposition, and those we oppose are the enemy. Every dramatic situation involves some form of this relationship. In fact, this is one of the primary tools that a storyteller has at their disposal. Some common actions here would be to oppose, to attack, to defend, to deceive, or to destroy. 3. Someone to nurture, the child. Anyone under our protection, anyone who is dependent on us, places us in the situation of being the parent or the nurturer. Those who are dependent become the child to us. Even adults that are in a position of dependency fall into this category. Some actions associated with this might be to support, to guide, to protect, to enrich, or to correct. 4. Someone to support us, the family and friends. We have all had people in our life that have added to our life by supporting us in one way or another. These are our family or our friends. The primary situation associated with this relationship is that of equality and acceptance, or of belonging. Actions most commonly associated with these situations are to support, to release, to restore, to learn, and to teach. 5. Someone to make love with, the lover. When we take steps beyond friendship, to both emotionally and physically involve ourselves, we do this with the lover. Strangely enough, most of the things that we want in our lovers are what we usually want from our friends. But what we want from a lover involves a deeper level of trust and physicality. Since sex is usually the dividing line between lovers and friends, this is where things start. So the situation created by being lovers is one of deeper physical and emotional commitment. Some actions that go with being lovers are to seduce, to pleasure, to use, to satiate, to love, to adore, to cherish. 6. Someone to follow, the idol. Many people in our world feel incomplete without certain exterior abilities that they believe they don't have. Someone that has these abilities becomes desired or admired as an idol. The situation here is one of vicarious participation and the need to be made whole. Some of the actions associated with this situation would be to worship, to copy, to watch, to follow. 7. Someone not known, the stranger. We, in the regular world, don't think of strangers as being a type of relationship. But, for actors, this is a relationship, and it has all of the things that any relationship has, except the prior history. The situation here is of having no connection to this person. Some actions in this case could be to acquaint, to introduce, to ignore, to avoid. Strangers, however, rarely stay strangers. Once you have some information on them, they fall into one of the above 6 types. Which leads us to the one point that you as actors should keep in mind about relationships. Relationships always change. I can't stress how important it is for an actor to know this. A relationship that doesn't change is dead, and the actor who is in this relationship is stuck. Events happen, and people change. It's as simple as that. So actors must change also, and they must always be adjusting their relationships, depending on the events that they encounter. If they don't, they will kill their connection to the people around them, act in a void, and the minute they do that, they will lose the audience. But what is it that changes a relationship? Simple. When a person's behavior changes, the relationship changes. Their actions. I want you to look back over the last few paragraphs. Notice that for each of the different relationship types, I included a situation that is typical to that relationship, and a couple of the actions that are also typical to these relationships. Actions are the things that the people in your life do to you. We will talk about what you do to others a little bit later. These behaviors are the foundation of why you have a particular relationship to a person, so when these change, your relationship must change as well. I want you to take a very close look at those things, actions. They are the person's behavior. I will take them up again in a section on the emotional bridge, when I talk about your actions, or your behaviors. For the time being though, I want to take a closer look at the general structure of actions. Let's get a little grammatical. I want you to notice that all of the actions had the word to in front of them. It is a very important word, this to. This simple word to indicates to us that someone is about to initiate an activity. The word that follows tells us what kind of activity they are about to perform. Put them together, and this is the behavior. To walk, to drive, to speak, to dance, to fall down. When you are looking at behaviors, you can use the formula to focus on what the other person actually does. This is important, because it is the other person's behavior that will change their relationship to you. Nothing else will give you as clear a picture of what the other person is all about at that moment than their actual behavior. Behaviors are always louder than words. I want to talk about just what you can use, and not use, to fill in the blank next to where the word to sits. Because if you fill that blank with the wrong thing, then you will confuse yourself and mislead the audience. Actors are always driving themselves to distraction by filling in this blank with something that is not an activity, but a goal or a desire. You cannot do a desire. You cannot do a goal. You can only do an activity, so an activity is the only thing that you can put in the blank. Something that you do. Something that the other person does. The most confusing non-activity that actors try to use to fill the blank is emotions. Emotions are reactions, not actions. Emotions are the result of activities. They are not the activities. But Peter, what about to anger, or to frustrate, or to hurt? Let me translate. I want to make someone angry. I want to stop the success of someone. I want to damage someone, either emotionally or physically. Emotions here are just goals disguised as actions. To make, to stop, and to damage are the activities that are actually taking place. An actor can act these. Emotions are the desires expressed as their activities, not the activities themselves. Thus, the actor can't do them, but only be them. So why all this hubbub about not using emotions? Easy, because you need to have a clear focus on what they actually do. Doing is the ball that you have to hit. Actions are what you react to. Keep your eye on them. If you feel frustrated, then you can bet your bottom dollar that someone has stopped you from getting what you wanted. If someone is damaging you in some way, or if they are trying to stop you, then the audience will see this, and so should you. Because that is something that they react to, so you must react to it too. There is another reason. If you can see clearly what others are doing, then your response will be clear, and it becomes easier for us to understand where that response comes from. The reason. You are at a fancy restaurant with your wife. It is your anniversary. You have your drinks and the food is on the way. Your wife excuses herself and goes to the women's room. She doesn't return in what would be the normal length of time. Concerned, you ask the waitress if she will go see if your wife is all right. She does. The waitress returns a few moments later to tell you that your wife has vanished. You are devastated. In a different situation, you are sitting at the dining room table. Your husband stands across from you. His bags are packed. He is leaving you. Things have been bad between you for a while. You begin to cry. He doesn't come to comfort you, and you wouldn't want him to. Instead, he says he's sorry that it had to be like this and leaves. You are devastated. In both of these situations, someone who was there is no longer there, and the other person ends up devastated. But in the first situation, the man's reaction would be different than the woman's. Why? In the first situation, the man doesn't know how or why his wife is gone. In the second situation, the wife knows exactly why her husband is leaving her. Knowing or not knowing the reason that events happen greatly alters how we react to those events. Mystery alters the way we accept things. The more mysterious an event is, the longer it takes us to absorb and accept the consequences of that event. We don't know what to feel because we don't know what has actually happened. In the case of the woman whose husband is leaving, she knows why, so she can feel her grief and heartache. She is no less devastated, but she understands the situation clearly and can react to it fully. She can accept the events and move on because the consequences, while just as devastating, are known. The man, however, doesn't know what happened to his wife. She could be kidnapped. She could have run off. She could have been killed by a psycho killer. Until he knows for sure, he will not be able to fully express any emotion, and he will not know clearly what to do. His emotional state will be kept from its natural course by the mystery of the event. But this leads us directly to the next part that I mentioned several times in the previous chapter. What the event means to our lives. The consequence. In the two situations I just talked about, each person's life was changed dramatically. Each of them was devastated, and each of them lost someone that they loved. The woman's husband left her. She knows why, and may even be glad, but she knows the full consequences to her life. The event for the woman will have an endpoint that she can see. The man may never find out what has happened to his wife. So the consequences for each event are very different. The consequences for each and every event vary, and big or small, will alter our reactions to those events. Everyone in the audience has lived through many events in their lives, and knows how the consequences of these events affect people's life. They may not have the terminology or training to be able to tell you in so many words, but they have a gut-level knowledge just the same. This gives us a valuable tool to use to connect with the audience. So, events take time to absorb, depending on the total consequence to our lives, and the mystery, or lack of mystery surrounding that consequence. Which means that when you add it all up, the bigger the chunk, the harder it is to swallow. Taking it in. Have you ever had a director tell you to slow down and take your time, especially at auditions? I did. Didn't this confuse you? It did me. Your words were practically molasses on a winter day, but they want you to take your time. What they are trying to tell you is that you are not taking the time necessary to absorb the magnitude of the event. Not that you are speaking too fast, but that you are reacting too fast. If it takes 31 seconds for the information that your father died to enter your consciousness, to hit bottom, then it takes 31 seconds. Not 35, or 38, nor 25, or 20, but just 31 seconds to find your center. Each moment of each event takes the time it takes to reach bottom. And each member of the audience has a gut-level understanding of this. I know that you have watched actors in a movie and understood that person took too long or took too little time. This absorption rate is very important to your audience's belief that you are really living the events that you say you are. They can feel the rightness or wrongness of your timing and will believe in you accordingly. The biggest mistake that you as an actor can make in relating is to rush the time it takes to absorb the event. The only way you can be spot on with this type of timing is to trust your gut explicitly and learn to wait for it to tell you to act. It will never let you down. It is like a wave. Learn to feel the event arrive and wait for it to reach its height before trying to do anything about it. Let the momentum of the wave give your response the correct power. The bigger the event, the longer it will take to get there, and the more powerfully it will drive your reactions. When you do this, suddenly people will tell you that your acting is organic. What a nice thing for them to say. The big ones. There is something that happens when you are relating to the really strange and the really big events. You are the man in the restaurant whose wife is missing. The waitress has just said that your wife isn't in the women's room. You know that something is deeply wrong because it feels like someone has slugged you in the stomach. But something intervenes before you fully take this in. The waitress says that your wife might have left. The real world interrupts the process of taking in the event. You have got to find out where she is. An activity is suddenly required of you. You know that she would never do this, so you reply that no, something is wrong, you've got to find her. Do you stop taking in the event? No, but it moves into the background while you take care of business, the suddenly required activity. The really big and really strange events take a lot of time to absorb, but often we don't have that time to take. We must get on with our lives or the activities that are required of us. In the case of this man, the knowledge that his wife's life may depend on his immediate actions gives him a compelling reason to put his feelings on the back burner until later. But you must be very clear that it is a setting aside of the emotions, not the dropping of the emotions. The man will still be devastated. He will just need to get something done amid that devastation. If you drop the emotions, it will look like you feel nothing for your wife. If you feel nothing, then neither will the audience. One other thing. If you are compelled to get on with it by the circumstances of the story, the audience will allow you to put that response in your back pocket for a time, but only for a short time. You will have to bring it out and let them see you have that response. If you do not let them see the response, or you forget to keep it with you, they will be disappointed when they don't get it from you. Do you want a disappointed audience? But life does go on, and does demand of us certain things that interrupt the process of how we relate. Usually, the author writes these compelling interruptions into the script. More often, they occur as the simple human necessity created by events. However they happen, they alter the way you relate. Overall, relatedness looks like this. Someone who means something to you does something specific for a reason that you may or may not know, that has consequences that affects your life, that events might not let you absorb fully, even though you still need to do something. Now, just so you won't be totally overwhelmed by the implied workload, I am going to give you a secret. The secret is that you repeat the structure of your relatedness over and over again. That means, for instance, that once you set up your relationships, you use them for a greater portion of the story. Also, the really big consequences and really big events come maybe once, or twice, or 3 times in a story, and that everything flows out of them. The other part of the secret is that your responses happen more or less automatically if you have set up the underlying structure and you have trained yourself to respond fully as a human being and as an actor. And that is the good news. Seeing is believing. There's one other very important thing to responding that you need to know about. When an event happens, the audience knows the right response to that event, and they wait to see how you will respond. Since they can't see into your head to understand the person you are portraying, they will only understand the response that you have if it is directly related to the event that they just saw happen. Because that is all that they have seen. So, your response must always be to the event that just happened. The response can be anything at all, as long as it is in direct relationship to the event that they just witnessed. The key here is that by always connecting your response to the event, you allow the audience to understand clearly where the response comes from. The bigger you make the response to the event, tells them how important the event is to you. Strange as this may seem, it doesn't matter what the response is. so much as it is firmly connected to the event that they just witnessed. People have strange reactions to events every day, and people overdo their reactions all the time. But if these reactions are not connected to the event that just occurred, then no matter how appropriate they are, they will look artificial. Of course, it is a given that the more appropriate your reaction to the events are, the more sane you will appear to the audience. But don't be misled here by appropriateness or sanity. The truly important thing for your acting is that your reaction, no matter what it is, be connected to what they just witnessed themselves. Many actors get into intellectual and sometimes very long-winded explanations about how they should react at a given moment, and totally forget to connect those sometimes brilliant reasons to the source of their reactions, the event. Okay, so now we know the source of our reactions, the event. And we know what that means to us, our relatedness. Where do we go from here? Onward, of course. Thanks for watching.